Welcome to BTS Lovers Update. Have you ever experienced a song so powerful that it makes the entire world fall silent? Globe showing Europe Africa musical notes. That night, at an international concert, thousands of eyes were fixed on one figure, Jimin. The lights dimmed, the first note echoed through the arena, and suddenly, something extraordinary happened. Why did the crowd grow completely quiet? What kind of song could hold such a massive audience in a single shared emotion? Was it just the melody that touched their hearts? Or was there a deeper story hidden behind every lyric Jimin sang? Why did tears begin to fall, not only from devoted fans, but also from people hearing his voice for the very first time? Loudly crying face sparkles. And the biggest question of all, is it true that this is the song that made the world finally understand Jimin's feelings? The answer was revealed in a moment no one will ever forget. Stay with us, because this story is not just about music, it's about emotion, honesty, and one song that left the world in silence. What happened that night was not something written in any rehearsal notes. It was not part of a set list designed for spectacle, nor was it a moment calculated for headlines. And yet, within seconds, it became one of the most talked about performances in recent global music history. The concert was already monumental. Held in a massive international stadium, attended by fans from dozens of countries, and broadcast across multiple continents, it was meant to celebrate music, connection, and the long-awaited return of live emotion after years of distance. The crowd was loud, colorful, alive. Light sticks danced like constellations. Cheers echoed endlessly. But then everything stopped. As Jimin stepped forward alone, the energy in the stadium shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but unmistakably. There was a pause, an instinctive one, where even the most excited fans seemed to sense that something different was about to happen. The lights dimmed, the band softened, and the first note rang out. Within moments, the noise of the world disappeared. A silence that spoke louder than screams. Silence in a stadium of tens of thousands is not normal. It is almost unnatural. And yet it happened. Phones lowered, voices faded, even breathing seemed synchronized. Journalists later described it as a collective emotional freeze. Social media users would call it the quietest loud moment in music. But those who were there struggled to find words at all. Because this was not just a song. This was a confession. Jimin stood still, microphone trembling slightly in his hand, eyes reflecting the soft glow of the stage lights. When he began to sing, his voice was not powerful in volume, but devastating in honesty. It wasn't about hitting notes. It was about exposing truth. The song that no one was prepared for. The song, whose title had been rumored but never fully understood, had been released months earlier. Critics praised its composition. Fans admired its vulnerability. But no recording, no lyric video, no studio version had prepared anyone for what it would become on that stage. This was not a performance. It was a revelation. Each line felt heavier than the last. The lyrics spoke of loneliness hidden behind smiles, of nights spent questioning one's worth, of loving deeply while feeling unseen. Themes that were universal, but somehow painfully personal when sung by Jimin. International media would later write, "It felt as though Jimin was singing directly to every single person who had ever felt alone in a crowded room." And perhaps that was why the tears began. Tears without language. What made the moment extraordinary was not just the emotion, it was its reach. Fans from Korea, fans from Europe, fans from Latin America, fans who didn't speak Korean fluently, fans who had never followed BTS before. They all cried. Some cried silently, some covered their mouths, some held on to strangers beside them. Language no longer mattered. Nationality disappeared. What remained was feeling. Cameras caught audience members openly sobbing. Even security staff were seen wiping their eyes. Later interviews revealed that many didn't fully understand the lyrics, but they understood the pain. And the beauty, Jimin's expression, the moment he almost broke. Midway through the song, Jimin's voice faltered. It wasn't a mistake. It was human. He paused for half a second, just enough for the audience to collectively hold its breath. His eyes shimmered, his jaw tightened, and then, with a quiet inhale, he continued. That single moment would later go viral. Fans would analyze it frame by frame. Psychologists would comment on the power of vulnerability. Musicians would call it the bravest pause in modern performance. Because in that pause, the world saw not an idol but a person. Why this song changed everything. So why this song? Why did this particular performance resonate so deeply, even among people unfamiliar with Jimin's journey? Experts suggest several reasons. Timing. The world is exhausted. Emotionally, mentally, people are carrying unspoken pain, and the song gave it a voice. Authenticity. There was no facade, no overproduction, just raw emotion. Jimin's artistic evolution. This was not the Jimin of debut days. This was an artist who had lived, struggled, grown, and chose to share that honestly. Collective healing. The concert became a shared emotional release. A safe space. International media reacts. Headlines flooded global outlets within hours. The song that silenced a stadium. Jimin's performance redefines emotional honesty in pop music. A moment that transcended K-pop. Music critics compare the performance to legendary live moments in history, those rare instances where art and humanity collide. One European journalist wrote, "This was not entertainment. This was empathy." Social media erupts. Clips of the performance spread faster than any promotional campaign ever could. Hashtags trended worldwide. Reaction videos poured in. Celebrities shared their disbelief. One comment stood out among millions. "I didn't know his story. I didn't know the lyrics. But I felt everything." Is this really the song that made the world understand Jimin? That question continues to echo. For years, Jimin had been admired for his elegance, precision, and stage presence. But this moment shifted the narrative. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about truth. For the first time, many felt they didn't just watch Jimin, they met him. Not as an idol, not as a symbol, but as a soul. When the final note dissolved into the vast air of the stadium, something unusual happened. The applause did not come immediately. Instead, there was a pause. Heavy, fragile, sacred. It was as if the audience needed a moment to return to reality after being pulled into something far deeper than a concert performance. Jimin stood there, head lowered, shoulders subtly rising and falling with his breath. The lights slowly brightened, revealing faces in the crowd streaked with tears. Some fans clutched their chests. Others held hands with strangers. Many simply stared at the stage, unable to move. Then the applause erupted. Not explosive, not chaotic, but thunderous in its sincerity. It was a standing ovation that felt less like celebration and more like gratitude. Backstage, a different kind of silence. Behind the stage, the atmosphere was just as heavy but quieter. According to staff members later interviewed, Jimin walked off stage slowly, still holding the microphone, eyes unfocused. He didn't speak immediately. He didn't smile. He simply nodded to the crew, as if acknowledging that something irreversible had just occurred. One staff member recalled, "We've seen standing ovations before, but this was different." It felt like the song stayed in the air even after he left the stage. For several minutes, Jimin remained alone in the dressing area. No cameras, no scripts, no audience, just the echo of what he had given and what he had received in return. The song's hidden weight. Long before that night, the song had already been quietly making waves among listeners who paid close attention. While not promoted as a title track in the traditional sense, it was often described by fans as the emotional core of Jimin's recent work. The lyrics, subtle yet piercing, spoke of emotional exhaustion masked by brightness, of learning to dance while carrying invisible scars, of wanting to be understood without having to explain everything. Lines that once felt introspective suddenly felt prophetic. Music analysts later pointed out that the song's structure itself mirrored emotional vulnerability, minimal instrumentation, pauses that allowed silence to speak, and a melody that rose not to impress but to confess. On that stage, every artistic choice revealed its true purpose. Fans who were never the same again. In the days following the concert, thousands of personal stories flooded social media. Not fan edits, not promotional clips, but testimonies. A fan from Brazil wrote, "I came for the energy. I left feeling seen." A concertgoer from Germany shared, "I didn't cry because I was sad. I cried because someone finally put my feelings into sound. Even non-fans found themselves drawn into the moment. Reaction videos from music teachers, vocal coaches, therapists, and journalists revealed the same conclusion. This was not about fandom, it was about humanity. Experts weigh in why this moment resonated globally. Psychologists and cultural commentators began analyzing why this particular performance struck such a deep chord worldwide. One cultural psychologist explained, Jimin didn't perform strength. He performed honesty. In a world that constantly rewards perfection, that kind of vulnerability feels revolutionary. Music critics echoed similar sentiments, noting that pop music, especially on massive stages, rarely allows space for fragility. And yet, that fragility was precisely what made the performance unforgettable. It wasn't loud enough to overwhelm. It wasn't dramatic enough to distract. It was real enough to stay. The question everyone is asking. As clips continued to circulate, one question dominated headlines and conversations alike. Is this the song that finally made the world understand Jimin? For years, Jimin had been admired for his discipline, elegance, and precision. He was known as a performer who never faltered, who carried stages with flawless control. But that perfection, while impressive, often kept the deeper story hidden. This song changed that. It revealed not just the artist, but the person behind the artistry. The pressure, the doubt, the longing to be understood without losing oneself. For many, it was the first time they saw Jimin not as an icon, but as a mirror. Jimin's quiet response. Notably, Jimin did not immediately comment on the performance. No dramatic posts, no emotional statements, no attempt to explain. Days later, however, he shared a brief message during a live interaction. His voice was calm. His words were simple. He said, "That song. I've carried it for a long time. I'm grateful you listened." That was all. And somehow it was enough. Fans interpreted the message not as closure, but as connection. Proof that the exchange on that stage was mutual. That the silence, the tears, the understanding had reached him too. A turning point in his artistic journey. Industry insiders now describe the performance as a defining moment in Jimin's career, not because it was grand, but because it was brave. From that night forward, conversations around his artistry shifted. Interviews focused less on image and more on intention. Reviews discussed emotional storytelling rather than choreography alone. One senior music editor wrote, "This wasn't a reinvention. It was a revelation. The legacy of one night." Years from now, fans may forget the exact set list, the outfit details, the camera angles, but they will remember the silence. They will remember the tears. They will remember the feeling of being part of something honest. That night proved that music does not need to shout to be heard. Sometimes, it only needs to be true.